Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar. There are two ways of investing in equity markets. One is growth and one is value. We have discussed a lot about growth style of investing, and just, to recap and maybe discuss in a summarized manner, growth style of investing is basically identifying sector leaders, identifying scalable businesses, those businesses which have consistent sales, earnings, return on capital employed, and investing in those companies for long term. Long term means more than 10 years. This is the growth style of investing. Value style of investing says nothing is permanent. Investment is about finding value. There is no point investing in number one player in the sector. Investing is about spotting mispriced opportunities and holding for 1 to 3 years to realize the value and never marry the stock. So basically, finding value and then maybe move over to the other company, other businesses. So both value and growth style of investing are equally important. However, over last couple of years or more than two years, growth style of investing has delivered far better returns, and value style of investing has kind of not delivered returns at all. So most investors today are, kindly more excited about growth style of investing. And most people, most companies, and many recent PMSs which have come up, they display growth style of investing, by saying quality businesses. That is what they mean by growth style of investing. Now, when one invests in growth style of companies which are quality businesses, there are couple of risks and couple of difficulties, in the sense that market always rewards contrarian view, and today everybody has a perspective and view or to invest towards quality style of investing. So this is one of the risks. Second risk is that quality or growth style of investing is always expensive, because you're finding companies with higher earnings, higher sales. This is all known to the stock market, and hence obviously the price of that will be very high. Third and most important aspect is that over next 10 years India would see as the economy evolving, where many such entrepreneurs who will think out of the box, or who will be able to deliver far better business models, will maybe come up from today being value kind of business to maybe quality or maybe growth kind of business tomorrow. So spotting them early is kind of very important to generate compounding, to generate wealth. Hence today we have amongst us our dear guest, Mr. Anirudh Sarkar, who is very expert in combining both growth and value style of investing. Welcome, Anirudh. A formal welcome to you. So
Thanks, Kamal.
Just to give a brief background, so Anirudh has been working as a senior portfolio manager, erstwhile with IFL Multicap PMS, which is one of the well-known popular PMS products. And of late, over the last 6 months, he has been heading equities, as well as he's a senior portfolio manager with Quest Investment Advisors. So we in this webinar will be discussing with Anirudh his views about markets, and specifically on cues, on how to identify, how to spot mispriced opportunities, which is more of a value style of investing. Before I start, I will again thank everyone to be participating in this webinar. And over to you, Anirudh. So now we'll be starting with questions. So first question, that I would like to ask you. Just give me a minute. I'll just open that. Yeah. So 2020 has been a roller coaster year for the markets, and investors have gone through rounds of fear and greed. I remember, you have been telling me that obviously investors' behavior and emotional question is very, very important. Now, we are at that level of market where, we have seen almost 85% of market recovering from their lows, right? So at this juncture, what are your views? How would you address this particular aspect? And what is your, perspective in this context?
Yeah, so as I always keep saying that so interestingly 2020 has been an amazing year, to be honest, because I think in a very short span of time people have seen a bull market, a bear market, and a bull market. So these are some things which you don't get to see in a span of 6 months, and I think in a span of 6 months we have seen all of it. One thing I keep telling investors is that, and I would like to again mention it, that, investing is all about making a fine blend of your EQ and IQ. IQ is your intelligence quotient and EQ is your emotional quotient. Now, IQ is something, which we can all acquire in the market, because, you can have your best of the class equity research. You can follow the best investment styles. You can follow your investment experts, and you can acquire the IQ. EQ is something, which is really a very, very big differentiating factor in the market. And I think the last 6 months has been a perfect testing ground of this particular aspect of investing. Now, so why I'm saying EQ is important is ultimately, I keep giving this example that, there might be two investors who would have bought the same stock. But if you look at the returns for the two investors over a span of 4 to 5 years, there would be very difference in their returns of that particular company which they would have invested, mainly because of their way of behaving with their portfolio holdings. Now, I would say that, before I come into, the other parts of our discussion, which is, where we see markets ahead and, what are the sectors and everything, I would say that, there are some 4 or 5 pointers I would like to touch base upon, which are very, very important when it comes to the EQ part of investing. The first point which, most investors they miss out on, and that is something I'm sure, investors and portfolio managers, they always repent on the hindsight, is booking of loss. Now, typically investors, when they enter into something, I have seen people are very reluctant to book a loss in an investment, even when they know that things are not going on track. Second thing is the ownership bias. Now, ownership bias is a very, very important factor, wherein that, people see a event which has happened in a company in a very different way when they own that company, compared to had they not owned that company. So ownership bias is something which actually freezes the mind of people, and especially in the last 6 months, if you see, I have come across n number of people, who have, because of the ownership bias, they have not been able to exit a company, or they have not been able to add extra position in that company. The third very important factor is booking gains on a rise. Now, when I speak to investors, most investors, they say that, portfolio manager का एक ही problem है, they keep on buying, कभी profit book नहीं करते हैं. So I think booking gains is something very, very important, and that again comes as a part of your emotional quotient, because typically what happens is, people, once they see a stock doing well, they feel it will continue to do well, and then they hesitate to take any profits out of it. And eventually what happens is, once they have seen a very high price, and post that when the stock comes off, then people make that high price as a benchmark and they hesitate to book profits. One very important part of investing, which I'll give you an example also of that, is that if you had a past, I would say a past outlook on a particular sector or a company, and what I'm giving an example, you will see this being a very, very important factor in my investment style also, which is that if people had a view on a particular sector or a company in the past, they don't change their view very fast. So that is where I would say bulk of the opportunity gets missed out when you hesitate to change your view or to adapt to the changing environment. So I would say 2020, the last 6 months have been perfect. I would say the perfect place where you could test all these points. And in fact, the 4 or 5 points I've mentioned, these have been perfectly tested in the last 6 months, wherein people have hesitated to book loss. People have hesitated to add on to some positions in companies which they earlier did not like. People have hesitated to kind of, book profits. So these are all kind of, has been seen in the last 6 months. Now, one example which I was saying that, wherein people hesitate to change their view on a particular sector or a company, I think has been a perfect example in case of the Reliance Industries. Now, if you see in the last several years, there was a period when, Reliance Industries was a completely underperformer. Then there was a phase, it gave you supernormal returns and outperformed the market. Then again, there was a phase wherein, it continued to underperform. Now, over the last 90 days, 90 days or slightly more, I would say around 100 days, there have been a series of events which has unfolded in the company, which we are all aware about. Now, the company, obviously, Mukesh Ambani had said that, the company wants to reduce its the leverage on its books, and it had given a target of 31st March. But obviously, with the first sequence of events which happened with the Facebook deal, definitely it was a step in the right direction, and that gave us an indication that he's very serious about what he has said. And it's time now that you start seeing the company not as an oil and gas old economy company. You have to start seeing it as a consumer IT and a retail company and a telecom company, which is not just a telecom, but it's going to be a consumer facing telecom company. Definitely, it warrants a different way of seeing the company. It warrants a different multiple. If you're giving it a 8, 10, 15 multiple earlier, being an old economy oil and gas company, the next generation company, which is going to get roughly 60-70% of its revenue from consumer and telecom and media and the other consumer facing angles, does not warrant the same 15 multiple. So definitely there is going to be a multiple expansion. The leverage on the books are decreasing. So definitely there is going to be a P expansion. There's going to be a significant upside. And that is where, one needs to take a change of view and definitely take a bet on a company which they would not have entered earlier. So I know several people, so obviously, so Reliance is I would say one of the most loved and one of the most hated companies on the street. So in spite of being the largest company in the country, it's one of the most hated and most loved company. And if you put in the same room, two people, one loves Reliance and one hates Reliance, you will see both will give you very excellent points for justifying their point. In fact, if you go through a few MNC brokerage reports, some of them paint a very excellent picture of where Reliance is going to be 36 months down the line. And some of them give you a very, very overvalued picture that, it's overvalued at this point of time. So I would say that there is a hesitance among people to change their outlook. Though they have gone right in the past, that doesn't mean that, you need to keep holding on to that view. And I think that is some, I would say, active change of view, which is required in the environment in which we are right now.
No, very true. Interestingly, today we were working on analyzing some of the PMS portfolios because the data, of underlying portfolio holdings that we manage, that also comes by, around 8/10 of subsequent month. And, we were realizing that though the reality is that today, there are volumes in equity markets which are at 15 years high, especially from retail side. A lot of media reports are coming on that. But as you rightly said, connecting to the emotional question, most of these investors who have been participating into equity markets on their own, invested in Bajaj Finance kind of a company, maybe at a level of 2,400 or 2,200, and they have exited at 2,900. I can tell you many of my clients, many of investors did the same thing in 2019. They entered at 1,900, exited at 2,400, it went up to 4,800. And then this time when it corrected, again, this time they had sworn that this time they will not be doing the same. But again, owing to fear and greed, right? They were lucky to spot maybe a quality business, but owing to greed and fear, again got trapped and have exited at 2,900. Right. Similarly, as you quoted about Reliance, people would have exited Reliance at 1,500, seeing it, at all-time high when markets were at low, because Reliance had already gone to levels of 1,500-1,600 when markets were fairly low in the month of May.
Right.
So it is obviously very difficult to manage one's emotional quotient, and hence it makes sense not to dabble on one's own, right? And to control one's own behavior is very, very difficult, right?
Absolutely.
So absolutely bang on that. So coming to the topic of this webinar, right? So you have been very experienced in merging both quality or growth style of investing with value style of investing. And value style of investing is generally difficult and prone to more risks, and hence more unpredictability and more mistakes. That is where it is easy, and people generally follow quality or growth style of investing, right? And obviously when they take lower risk, they compromise and they expect lower return, right? Return gets compromised. But the fact is that today, broader markets have seen correction in last 36 months, and there is a huge opportunity in spotting mispriced opportunities, right? Maybe a growth style of company could also see mispricing. Like, as you say, beauty lies in the eyes of beholder, right? So somebody who's quoting positive figures about an anticipated future of Reliance is seeing mispricing even in Reliance, like you mentioned, right, in terms of its price to earning multiple. So what are the various cues? What are the various examples of companies and businesses in current context where there is mispricing, and which is what is an opportunity for investors for next 36 months? Reliance is one. You have already explained that, right? So you can maybe continue from there. Over to you.
Yeah. So basically, I think the question which you asked, it actually brings me to my investment strategy, which is sector rotation. Because see, ultimately, all of us have been there in the market for ages now, and we all know that, in every cycle, all the sectors do not perform equally well. Typically, if you go back last 30-35 years, you will see that every 4-5 years of, upcycle in the market, there have been few sectors which have been the market leaders, and there will be few sectors which are at the bottom of the market. So I'll just share one screenshot which will kind of give you an example. 1 second. Is it visible? Is it visible?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm saying, is it visible?
No, it's not visible now.
1 second. Is it visible now?
Yeah, this is visible now, right?
Yeah. So if you see this, this actually, this is the data of the last 18-20 years. And if you see the ones in the red are the ones which are the worst performing sectors in that year. And the ones in green are the ones which are the best performing sectors in that year. Now, we just analyzed this last 18-20 years. So obviously, sector rotation has been a strategy which I've been following over the years. And, this is something which is a very excellent depiction of, what this all means about. And if you just see it, obviously, you cannot calculate right now, but I'll give you the actual numbers. Over the last 8-10 years, what we have seen is that the top few sectors which have performed in that year, if you take the average returns of the top few sectors which have performed in that year and the average of the bottom few sectors of that year, the difference in their returns in 1 year is around 40%. Now, 40% is a very high difference for returns in 1 year if you just see the difference in the average returns between the top performing sectors and the bottom performing sectors in that year. Obviously, you cannot get all your sector selections right. But even, if you get 70 to 75% of your sector selections right, it's a significant amount of alpha which you can build up in the portfolio. And this has been something, which I have been adopting over the years. And this is something I would say has been a big reason for the portfolio alpha creation, which you are aware about, the type of returns I've been able to generate over the last 6-7 years. And sector selection has been a big contributor. And I think rightly, as we are discussing this particular aspect today about, which are the sectors and which are the companies which are going to do well in the next 36 to 46 months, 36 to 48 months, I would like to break it into a couple of, basically into two parts. The first part is, I would say that I see a big disruption in the global supply chains, which is going to happen, which is evident from the way the whole pandemic has, I would say, changed the balance of the economy in the world. The first part is disruption, the beneficiaries of the disruption in the global supply chain. And the second part would be the beneficiaries of a rising disposable income and demand in the country. So the second part will be a follow-out of the first part. Now, some of the companies and sectors, which will be benefiting from the disruption in the global supply chains. Some of them are, I think, very well discussed in the last 60 days or 90 days in all the media channels. But still, I would like to mention, because that is something which I'm very overweight on in my portfolios. One is specialty chemicals and another is the pharma business. So I would put the two in the same bucket, specialty chemicals and pharma business. And The way I see things is that, right now, India roughly contributes to around 4% of the global chemical sales, in spite of being the sixth largest chemical manufacturer. So that shows the disconnect. We are the sixth largest manufacturer, but we just contribute to 4% of the sales. And if you see the type of capex many of the Indian companies has done in the last 24 to 36 months, and also the type of capex most of these guys have planned in the next 12 to 18 months, I think it's evidence enough that chemicals and specialty chemicals is going to be in that phase where your Indian pharma sector was in 2008-9. So Indian pharma sector, it completely took off in 2008-9 when they started, doing the contract manufacturing and making those drugs at almost 1/10 the price at which the MNCs were doing it. And post that, we know how there was a sharp upward movement in all the pharma companies in the country. Chemicals, specialty chemicals, across industrials, agri-chemicals, I see immense opportunity in that space. And I think India has a very, I would say, advantage in this aspect that many of these companies in India, they have got strong backward linkages, and they have also done several joint ventures with many MNC companies in the last couple of years, for which they are getting, access to those R&Ds of those MNC companies. So I see, immense opportunity in that space. Some companies which, we own in our portfolios are, something like a Coromandel International, Surfactant, your Galaxy's Surfactant, Atul Limited, Vinati Organics. We like companies like Naveen Fluorine. So these are like, world-class companies, which I feel that, where they stand today, they can easily grow at annualized 30 to 40% over the next 5 to 6 years. Within the pharma space also, you have your same winners like earlier, and I think that is again going to be a very, very big beneficiary of many global companies who want to move away from their Chinese sourcing and want to have some of the sourcing from the other countries. The other sector which I'm very bullish on, and it's actually a contrarian call, and I have had this contrarian call over the last 4 months, and it has played out exceptionally well for us and for my investors. And in fact, I remember that, when so it's autos and auto ancillaries. So autos and auto ancillaries, when I was buying somewhere in the month of March, when the sharp corrections had happened in the month of March, so I was busy picking up some of the auto and ancillary companies, because the way I see it is that obviously, today China is the largest, supplier on the auto ancillary side in the world. India, interestingly, is the largest manufacturer of the motorcycles in the world. And I see no reason why Indian auto ancillary companies and many of the similar companies don't have a chance to become as big as your Bajaj and Hero of the world in supplying auto ancillary components to international OEMs over there. So auto ancillaries and auto OEMs, I see immense opportunity. Within the auto OEMs, I'm especially bullish on the agri side. So, I have been very, very bullish on the agri equipments and the agri tractors. So we have both Escorts and M&M in our portfolio. And I would say it has moved much faster than my expectation, but I see immense opportunity in Escorts, because Escorts, from being a pure tractor company, it's also migrating to to an agri equipment company, and it has done a joint venture with a Japanese market leader in agri equipments. And I see that the company is going to emerge as a very, very big, serious player in the agri equipments export market. Obviously, in India, we do not use so much of agricultural equipments, but on the export side, it's a very, very big opportunity, which I definitely see being a very big potential. On the auto ancillary side, there are many companies which are world class, and some of them are, available. So when, in the month of March, so that's why I say that, the last 6 months has been amazing for people, who like to buy good businesses at amazing price. So as you mentioned, initially that, growth versus value, I think in the last 6 months, there was huge opportunity to pick up the value companies at amazing prices. So some of these auto ancillary companies, which we have picked up in our portfolios are like Endurance. Then we picked up something like a Varroc Engineering. and we got these at 5-6 p multiple. If you buy such amazing companies at 5-6 p multiples, your margin of safety is very, very high. And the possibility of these companies becoming international suppliers is immensely high. And I see huge opportunity for these companies increasing their wallet share with the OEM players with whom they are already doing business, and also as an export order. uh, After specialty chemicals, pharma, auto ancillary, the third sector which I see huge opportunity, but obviously you do not have too many players to participate in that sector right now, is your electronics manufacturing. Now, in the electronics manufacturing, I would put it in this way that you have something like a Dixon, Amber, Voltas. So these all come in that space, wherein they can tomorrow become your export hubs from India. Now, Dixon has been doing amazing work in the last couple of years in, the mobile manufacturing. And the way I see it is that there will be many other players who will be kind of, doing similar businesses, whether it's on the mobiles or on the other electronic components or on the home appliances. Companies like Voltas can actually take a large amount of market share in the export market. So right now, Voltas is obviously not much into exports. It has around 23-24% of the domestic AC market, the room AC market, but I see it as a big export hub or a big export potential in the coming years. So electronic manufacturing is one big space which I see as a very, very big opportunity in the next coming years. So these few sectors are the beneficiaries which I see in as a beneficiary of the disruption which is going to happen in the global supply chains. To summarize, it's chemicals, specialty chemicals, pharma, auto OEM and auto ancillaries, and your electronics manufacturing. One sector which I see, which I already discussed initially, which is going to be a beneficiary because it's going to be a facilitator of the entire disruption, is going to be your telecom. Now, telecom, obviously, you don't have too many options to play in India. You just have a Bharti and a Reliance. And so I would say that, we own both of them. So Bharti is obviously a pure telecom play, and Reliance is more like a telecom and a consumer play. So I would say that, both of these companies have immense potential over the next 24 to 36 to 48 months, because, whatever pain was there in the telecom sector is all like, it's in the past, and you have just handful of players now. And with the increasing bandwidth consumption, with all of us now working from home, we having this webcast also, the amount of consumption of bandwidth is immense. ARPUs are on a rise. If you see the last 6 to 12 months, ARPUs have been going up from 135 to 150 to 165. And the way the outlook is on the industry, I don't see a reason why the ARPUs cannot go to 250 plus in the next 24 months. So as a consumer, obviously, I'll not be very happy. But, I would say if you want to hedge your expenditure on your on your monthly bills, I think, owning Reliance and Bharti is the only option you have to hedge against that. So I feel that, both of these have huge potential. Also, Tata Communication is something which we own in our portfolios. And I believe that, it's a very, very high quality business. It's into your enterprise internet connections, and it has the largest network of, your under the sea cables which is there. So these three are the players which we see immense potential over the next couple of years. Now, these are the sectors which I spoke about was a beneficiary of the disruption. Now, one other part which I mentioned is the beneficiary of the rising disposable income. Financials, obviously, if you're talking about investment in India, you cannot do without financials. And, when I say financials, and you are all aware that, so you are aware that, earlier in my portfolio, I used to have almost like 35-40% financials, which thankfully, in the month of January, February, I decreased in my portfolios to as low as around 24%. But then, financials is something, it's a proxy on the country. If the country has to grow, financials has to grow. So financials is going to be a big beneficiary of your rising disposable income and also the rising, economic activity. I would put financials into these three buckets. One is the annuity business, one is the lending business, and the third is the financial services. On the annuity business, you will have your companies like your insurance companies, your AMC companies, which I feel is just about to pick up in the country. With your type of financial penetration on the insurance side, on your asset management side, I think we are just at the bottom with just 4 to 6% of penetration. I think we have a huge ground to cover, and I think on the financial side, these are going to be big beneficiaries both on your asset management side and on your insurance side. The other is the a lending business in which it's there in the market. We all are aware about it. Roughly, your a lending business grows at 1.5 times the economic activity. So if you are believing that the country GDP is going to grow at 6% or 5% in the next couple of years, we can easily assume that your lending in the economy is going to grow by around 8-9%. So roughly 1.5 times is your growth in your lending business. So this definitely has a huge scope, and I think the last 12 months it has become evident that the big is going to get much bigger. So whether it's your HDFC of the world, ICICIs of the world, Bajaj Finance of the world, these are the guys who will gain more market share. These are the guys who will grow exponentially, and this side of the financial business is something which has huge potential. The last part of the financial services is your securities business, and you have a handful of such companies to play with, whether it's ICICI Securities, IFL Securities, Edelweiss Securities, Motilal. So these are some of the businesses which I see, and I think it's evident. So I think in the WhatsApp groups over the last couple of days, we are all seeing the type of internet-based trading which has increased. It's not just a trend in the US; it's also a trend in India, with people now sitting at home and just busy with their online equity markets. So I think it's not something which is just a short-term phenomena. I feel that with increasing awareness about equity markets, with increasing awareness about accessibility to information and increasing penetration of financial advisors, I think online trading is something which is definitely going to be there, and we like this space a lot, which is your online broking platforms, and ICICI Securities, IFL Securities. These are some of the best bets which we like in that space. So just to summarize for the viewers, the broad sectors, because I think this is the main agenda of the webinar. I would like to put in this way that the broad sectors which I'm very bullish on over the next 36 months is your specialty chemicals and pharma, your automobiles, both in the OEMs and auto ancillaries, electronics manufacturing, your telecom, which are your enablers, and your financial services, which I just mentioned elaborately. Yeah, so these are the broad sectors which I'm very bullish on. I would actually completely avoid the cyclical space, and that has been my philosophy always. I avoid the high capex cyclical basket, though your metal stocks might do well and they will do well, but I would not venture into that space. Oil and gas is something, your oil exploration and those parts I would avoid completely. Capital goods, infra is a big avoid for me. I might have some small exposure, but typically I would want to avoid that space. So these are like some big avoids for me in the next 24 to 36 months.
Sure. So, though you have discussed a couple of company names, so I would just like to give a disclaimer that, this is just for education purposes and it has nothing to do with any kind of advice. Nothing, not only to, for one to understand and one to, maybe take informed investment decision. So now, coming to the more concrete part of whatever you have discussed, you have shown very insightful slide, which was talking about last 20 years of sector rotation, right? So, for whatever time you had displayed, I could grasp whatever I could do. And I could see that,
I'll
they
put
have,
it online again.
yeah, you can please put that again. That was very interesting.
1 second. Yeah. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible now. So, for example, in 2019, there was 24%, growth shown by consumer discretionary, right? Which is the last year. And likewise,
It's energy. It's energy.
it's energy, right?
Yeah. So energy, basically your RIL. So it was all contributed by your RILs and your OMCs. Yeah.
Right. But again, the question is that if this is we are talking about sector-wise, sector rotation. It is equally important to spot, because energy as a space would not have given 24% return. There are a lot of stocks, PSU companies, which would not have contributed, right? So the question, I'm going to ask two questions. Question number one: out of all these 6 7 sectors that you have talked about, if one has to pick two sectors, it's obviously difficult to pick one sector, right? Here you have shown one best and one worst sector, right? I'm
Right.
not wanting you to talk about one best and one worst sector for, say, next 1 year. I'm saying, let us make it easier. Let's talk about two best and two worst sector for next 3 years.
So I feel that, out of all the sectors which I mentioned, I see the highest potential in your specialty chemicals and auto ancillaries, because both of these can become huge, because the base for, see, the good part is the base for both of these is very, very low. Because both of these are sitting on a very small base, and the potential for a small base to grow exponentially is very high. So I see immense potential for both specialty chemicals and auto ancillary. All the more because both of these are very easy to scale up. You don't need any special expertise. You don't need, like, if I say pharma, it's, the thing is, in pharma, you need several years of R&D for coming up with something new and things like that. Specialty chemicals and auto ancillary is something you don't need several years of R&D and things like that. You can scale up, you can do a joint venture with someone, bring in the technology, and you can easily scale up. The other good part is, if you see the whole auto ancillary space in India, there are many companies. So it's actually a very interesting thing to see in the auto ancillary space. There are many companies in India which have joint ventures with several MNCs. There are many auto ancillary companies which have 15, 20, 30% ownership by a MNC. And that gives them access to not just the international R&D, but also to the international markets. And I think, these two other sectors which definitely have huge potential. But I would still want to add telecom, because that is my one of my hot favorites. And I would say that, if you have to pick up, because see, if you see my strategy also, which I mentioned, I say that, roughly 4 sectors is wherein 80% of my allocation is. Though your index might have 8 to 9 sectors, but I typically have 80% of my allocation into the top 4 sectors. And I would say, if you ask me the top 2 sectors, definitely chemicals and auto ancillaries, and followed with telecom. The bottom 2, which will be an avoid for me, as I mentioned, I would not want to get into your the metals. The metals is something, it's an avoid for me, because I avoid metals because there are too many uncertainties on the international side with regard to the way the metals is going to move. China being a very big consumer of metals, if the Chinese PMI data comes weak, which is happening in the last couple of months, definitely it puts a pressure on the prices of international metals. So metals is something which definitely can do well, but it would be an avoid for me. PSUs, when it comes to PSUs, I would say within the PSUs, the power generation companies and the similar companies, it would be an avoid for me. Because historically, I see, companies like NTPC, NHPC, they have power grid, these have never made any money for us. They are good as dividend yields. They are good for the government because, government owns bulk of it, that's why they get the dividends. But, as an investor, if I'm looking at a capital appreciation, these are some of the sectors which would be a complete avoid for me. Airlines is definitely, you can't even think of airlines in the next 6 to 12 months. So definitely it's an avoid, complete avoid.
I think it has been really, really insightful interacting with you. So it was, a lot to learn, and we have a lot to kind of cover in terms of an article post, this webinar. So thank you so much for your time, and
it's a pleasure always.
yeah, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.